In episode 3 of the Control and AI series, we examine the Manus deal and why it establishes a new category in antitrust, the partially realized deal. Such arrangements can range from theory to early integration and technical direction, but never cross the line into actual control.
In the tech world, power usually shifts with this massive bang, right?
Right, yeah, it's a spectacle.
Exactly. Like a huge company announces some multi-billion-dollar acquisition, the financial press just goes wild, and then regulators either, block it with a dramatic lawsuit or they just wave it through.
And then the paperwork is signed.
Yeah, exactly. The papers get signed. It's treated as this totally binary event. The merger happens or it doesn't. But today, our mission is to shortcut your way to understanding a really fundamental shift happening right under our noses.
A shift where that clean binary it doesn't exist anymore.
Right. And to do this, we're pulling insights from this genuinely fascinating report by EconWorks. It's titled Control and AI Episode 3, Meta, Manus, and the Question of Control in AI.
Which is, it's just an essential read for anyone trying to navigate the current tech landscape, because what this report captures isn't just, another Silicon Valley business story.
Yeah, it's way bigger than that.
It really is. It documents this profound transformation in how influence and technical direction and just raw market power are actually accumulated behind closed doors.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are focusing on a deal that almost was a transaction between the social media giant Meta and this rising AI company called Manus.
Right.
And usually when we hear about a merger falling apart, it's a very familiar narrative, right? Like regulators step in with a red light, or maybe the executives crunch the numbers, get cold feet, and just walk away.
Yeah, they just go back to being competitors.
Exactly. But this Meta-Manus situation, it did something entirely different. It didn't just fail and, reset to zero. It progressed, it integrated deeply at an engineering level, and then it paused.
Just paused in this brand new, completely uncharted gray zone.
Yeah. And to understand why that pause is so critical for you as a listener, we have to recognize that this isn't about just absorbing obscure corporate trivia.
No, not at all. It's about seeing the actual mechanics of how the future of artificial intelligence is being quietly directed.
Yes, directed in the shadows.
Exactly. We're looking at a scenario where the transfer of power happens far ahead of any legal closing date. By the time a deal is officially announced or abandoned, the foundational architecture of the technology might have already been altered forever.
And the danger of that hidden timeline, it becomes really clear when we actually look at the exact sequence of this Meta-Manus transaction. Because according to the EconWorks report, at first glance, this looked like a completely standard tech acquisition.
Right, totally by the book.
Yeah. You start with a signed agreement, then you move into early stage technical due diligence, which is basically where the acquiring company looks under the hood of the startup.
They want to see what they're actually buying.
Exactly. And then, crucially, their engineering teams start exploring how to actually integrate these two incredibly complex systems.
Which, historically speaking, is standard operating procedure. A massive company like Meta, they can't just blindly purchase a complex AI architecture.
Right. They'd be flying blind.
Yeah, they have to map out exactly how the puzzle pieces will fit together, how the data pipelines will connect, and what the joint product roadmap will actually look like if the deal finally goes through.
But the report highlights this shocking twist. The deal never reached full operational closing. The final papers were never stamped. The check, it was never cashed.
Never cash.
But the transaction advanced far enough to fundamentally begin shaping the technical direction, the system design, and the integration pathways of both platforms.
That's wild to think about.
It is. And I was thinking about how to visualize this for you. And it's kind of like hiring an elite architect to remodel your house. You bring them in, they measure every single inch of your space. You spend weeks drawing up these extensive blueprints.
Right, getting deep into the details.
Yeah, like debating exactly where the new load-bearing walls are going to move so you can open up the living room. Now, even if you never sign the final multi-million-dollar construction contract,
you still have those blueprints in your head.
Exactly. Simply going through that intensive blueprint phase, it changes how you view your living space forever. You've already shifted your design direction. You literally can't unsee the new layout, and your future renovations will probably follow those exact same lines.
That captures the dynamic perfectly, I think.
Yeah.
The psychological and architectural shift, it's already occurred.
Yeah.
And building on that, EconWorks identifies this specific phenomenon as a completely new category of transaction in the tech market. They classify them as partially realized deals.
Partially realized deals.
Yeah. These are arrangements that move well beyond, theoretical boardroom discussions. They step firmly into early technical integration, but they stop just short of full legal operational control.
Partially realized. It sounds almost like a ghost deal,
Yeah.
Like the structure is there, but the legal entity just isn't.
It does sound kind of ethereal,
Mm-hmm.
but the market impacts are completely concrete. And I think the key takeaway from the first part of this report is that we had to discard the whole vocabulary of a failed merger.
Because it implies they just went back to normal.
Right. A failed merger implies a hard reset.
Yeah.
Right. Return to the status quo, where both companies just burn the blueprints and go their separate ways. But the Manus transaction proves that the status quo is gone.
It's totally gone.
The deal lingered in this gray zone between total independence and total control. And in the world of artificial intelligence, that gray zone is where the actual intellectual value is exchanged.
Okay, so that raises a massive question for me. I understand the mechanics of how they partially merged in this gray zone, but I am still really stuck on the why.
The motivation behind it?
Yeah, why these two specific companies? Because if we're talking about direct competitors, like, say, a major airline buying a smaller airline to dominate a specific route, the danger of sharing blueprints makes complete sense.
Oh, absolutely.
But Meta and Manus, they do completely different things. I mean, one serves you ads and social feeds, and the other automates your spreadsheets. So why on earth is a social media platform peering into the blueprints of a workflow automation tool in the first place?
Well, to see the strategic value there, we really have to look at the structural architecture of the tech industry itself. And the report brilliantly categorizes this using a framework of adjacent layers.
Adjacent layers, okay.
Yeah, because you were absolutely right that this isn't a traditional horizontal merger where, two companies are fighting for the exact same customer dollar. They operate on totally different levels of the user experience.
Let's break down those economic objects then, because the report makes it really clear they're fundamentally different beasts. On one side, you have Meta, and the report places them in what it calls the attention layer.
The attention layer.
Yeah, because Meta operates as this massive, multi-sided platform. Their entire game is attention capture, advertising monetization, and building these incredibly sticky network effects across their social products.
You go there to scroll, to watch, to engage. Your attention is the literal product.
Exactly. And then on the other side, you have Manus. And they operate in what EconWorks defines as the execution layer.
Right, the execution layer. We are talking about highly capable AI agents, task execution, workflow automation. The report notes these agents have the potential to completely substitute for traditional software as a service tools.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, so instead of opening an app to book a flight or, analyze a spreadsheet, you simply tell the AI agent what you want, and it executes the task across the web on your behalf.
Okay, so attention on one side, execution on the other. But I still have to play devil's advocate for the listener here.
Go for it.
Usually, we look out for a big company buying its direct competitor to kill rivalry. So why would regulators break a sweat over this? If they aren't directly competing, why is linking a social feed to a smart to-do list such a structural threat to the whole market?
If we connect that to the bigger picture, you have to consider the mechanism of what happens when you fuse those two layers together. What this represents is a convergence of ultimate control.
Ultimate control. Okay, how so?
Well, if you integrate the attention layer with the execution layer, you are suddenly linking human intent directly to AI action. You control the entire technological stack.
Okay, I'm trying to visualize this practically. How does that actually play out for a normal user?
Think about it this way. Right now, Meta controls where you are looking. They know your interests, your habits, your social graph. Now, if they own Manus, they don't just own your attention. They own the automated actions you take as a result of that attention.
Oh, I see.
Right. You see an ad for a vacation on Meta, and the underlying Manus AI instantly navigates the web, finds the best flights, books the hotel, and updates your calendar.
So they capture the thought and the purchase.
Exactly. Meta would own the pathway from the initial thought all the way through to the final economic execution. It shifts control across the entire ecosystem. It's not just about dominating one isolated software market. It's about owning the underlying infrastructure of how humans interact with digital services, period.
Wow. When you put it like that, the stakes are just astronomical. You aren't just buying a software company. You are trying to own the friction between wanting something and getting it.
Precisely. And that's why the report outlines 3 specific, really untested antitrust questions that regulators desperately wanted to ask about this kind of integration.
Yeah, let's look at the mechanics of those 3 questions because I think they highlight why the current legal system is just struggling to keep up. So, first, there's the question of potential competition.
Right. Regulators ask, could Manus, sitting down there in the execution layer, eventually evolve into a rival user interface?
Oh, like bypassing Meta entirely.
Exactly. If AI agents become good enough, you might stop going to Meta's apps altogether and just interact directly with the agent. So by buying Manus, Meta might be quietly killing a future threat to their primary interface.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, the second question the report highlights is about ecosystem leveraging. This is about the ripple effects, right?
Yeah, ecosystem leveraging.
Yeah.
Because if Meta integrates Manus, how does that disadvantage every other competing AI tool out there? Manus would suddenly have exclusive access to Meta's massive proprietary well of human behavioral data.
Right, all those billions of users.
A competing AI startup simply couldn't match the predictive capability of an agent that's been trained on the social graphs of 3 billion people. It essentially starves the competition of the raw data they need to survive.
Okay, and then the third question is about control over future interfaces. Who ultimately gets to shape the next generation of user interaction?
Exactly. If Meta controls the ultimate execution layer, they get to dictate the standards, the protocols and the rules of engagement for the next decade of software development.
Those are all incredibly potent theories of competitive harm. I mean, they sound terrifying. But the report points out this massive, paralyzing roadblock for regulators.
Yeah, the market definition problem.
Right. They couldn't fully test these questions in court because the AI market itself is not yet clearly defined. Antitrust law requires you to define a specific market before you can prove someone is monopolizing it.
But there is no neat, tidy box labeled the AI agent market.
No. The report describes it as these overlapping fragments. You've got legacy software, search engines, enterprise tools, and automation systems all just bleeding into one another. It's like trying to regulate a cloud. It's everywhere and nowhere.
It really is.
And because the market boundaries are so fragmented, measuring actual competitive harm becomes highly speculative. It's easy to write a thesis about, but almost impossible to actually litigate in front of a judge who expects to see, traditional market share percentages.
Which is the exact loophole that allowed this transaction to slip into that gray zone we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Because the legal and regulatory frameworks couldn't cleanly define the market to block the deal outright on day one, the transaction was legally permitted to just linger in this highly dangerous pre-integration phase.
Okay, but let me channel the listener's skepticism here for a second. If this pre-integration blueprint phase is so structurally dangerous, why don't regulators just update the rules? Like, why not just ban companies from doing technical due diligence until the deal legally closes?
Well, it's a fair question, but it hits a massive practical wall. The law allows for certain interactions before a deal officially closes, just out of pure necessity.
Necessity how?
If Meta is spending billions of dollars, they cannot buy the technology completely blind. They have to know it works. Furthermore, they need to plan so that on day one of the merged company, the servers don't just crash and the products don't instantly break.
Right, okay. So according to the report, let's look at what is typically allowed during this pre-close period. You are legally allowed to do technical due diligence. You can engage in sandbox testing where your engineers play with their code. You can do architecture planning, and you can even align your long-term product roadmap.
Yeah, that's all standard.
But what is strictly forbidden is unified pricing, coordinated market behavior like agreeing not to compete on certain products, and transferring actual operational control.
The intention behind the law is logical, You can plan the architecture of the house, but you cannot move your furniture in and start living there before you buy it.
Right, but here's where it gets really interesting and where the report totally blew my mind. That rule makes perfect sense for traditional industries. Like if you have 2 massive physical factory networks merging, you don't accidentally merge your operations while you're just inspecting the assembly line.
Right, the stamping machines don't magically merge.
Exactly. The physical assets, the delivery trucks, the warehouses, they are distinct. But in artificial intelligence, just looking at the blueprints is the value. I mean, if my engineers are deep inside your sandbox testing, looking at how your neural networks are structured, haven't we already kind of merged the most important parts?
The underlying logic there is undeniable. In the AI space, the boundary between planning and doing is almost non-existent.
Totally blurred.
And to understand why, you just have to look at where the actual value of an AI company lives. Unlike physical factory assets, the value isn't in hardware you can lock in warehouse.
Yeah.
It is entirely embedded in its mathematical models, its data training pipelines, its weights, and its overarching engineering philosophy.
It's pure information. It's directional momentum.
Exactly. By the time two advanced AI companies are deep into sandbox testing and aligning their product roadmaps, the transfer of technical direction has already occurred. The knowledge has migrated.
Wow.
The algorithmic pathways have been aligned. They certainly haven't unified their consumer pricing yet, but their top engineering teams are already pointing in the exact same direction, building the underlying code toward a shared future state.
So the damage or, the value transfer, depending on whether you are a regulator or a shareholder, is already done.
Yes, exactly.
The Manus case shouldn't be defined by the fact that the legal merger failed. As the report powerfully argues, it is defined by where it stopped. It reached a point where a formal agreement existed, profound technical exploration was deeply underway, early architectural alignment was cemented, and then it simply halted before crossing the final formal threshold of operational control.
And that reality, that stopping point, is the genesis of the EconWorks framework. Partially realized deals are much more than hypothetical thought experiments, but they are technically less than fully operational mergers. Yet they possess this stealthy power to shape competitive dynamics and free market structures just as heavily as a completed monopoly.
Which means the Manus story is not just some quirky, isolated incident. It is a blueprint. It is a massive warning sign for the entire AI industry, really proving that our traditional textbook definitions of corporate ownership are becoming completely obsolete.
They really are.
And to really cement how widespread this is, the EconWorks report introduces a brilliant framework called the 3 Paths to Control.
Yeah, and this section is perhaps the most crucial synthesis in the entire document, because it zooms out and lays out exactly how power is moving across the board today.
Right. So, path number 1 is the traditional merger. You sign an agreement, you move to legal closing, and you achieve control. It's simple, linear, highly visible to regulators.
The classic way.
Yep. Then path number 2 is what we've been deep diving into today, the Manus path. You have an agreement, you dive into technical exploration, you achieve early engineering alignment, and then you estoppy. There is no formal closing, but the technical direction of the market has irrevocably shifted.
Right.
But then there is path number 3. The report calls it the AI organization path. And the prime example they point to here is OpenAI. Now, I'd love for you to expand on that.
Absolutely. This raises an important question because when we look at path 3, the entire concept of control gets even more abstract and complex. It forces us to ask a very uncomfortable question about how we define power in the tech sector today.
Because when you look at the various disputes and massive structural shifts involving OpenAI and Microsoft, it clearly isn't a traditional merger. I mean, Microsoft didn't buy OpenAI outright. They don't own them in a Paths 1 sense.
Right, which means we have to interrogate what control actually looks like now. Is control strictly defined by traditional equity ownership? Is it defined by who legally sits on the governance board? Or, in the modern landscape of large language models, is control dictated by the infrastructure you depend on?
Okay, I want to make sure I'm grasping the mechanics of this infrastructure dependence. It's like, let's say it's like running a high-speed rail network.
Okay.
You might technically own the trains, and you might sell the tickets to passengers under your own brand name. But if a massive tech giant owns the physical tracks, generates all the electricity required to move those trains, and controls all the stations, who actually controls the railroad?
That is a phenomenal way to illustrate the dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
In the AI world, compute power, the massive server farms and specialized microchips required to train and run these models, that compute power is the electricity in the tracks.
Okay, I see.
If a tech giant provides all your computing power, and in exchange, they hold exclusive commercial rights to integrate your cutting-edge models into their global enterprise software, do they control your company? Even if they don't own a controlling share of your stock, they dictate your operational reality.
Because if they shut off the compute, your models die.
Instantly.
And if they change their enterprise software strategy, your revenue just dries up.
Exactly. The AI organization path argues that functionally, yes, they do exert control. Control in this third path accumulates gradually. It can shift almost entirely without a formal acquisition or regulatory filing ever taking place.
Wow.
The boundary between a strategic commercial partnership, a corporate acquisition, and actual unassailable market control is no longer a simple toggle switch. It is a highly nuanced sliding scale.
It's terrifyingly subtle. You don't need to endure a brutal public antitrust buyout if you already control the oxygen in the room, the compute, the distribution, the infrastructure.
And the invisible thread connecting all of this is that the ambiguity, that gradual, quiet accumulation of control is driven by the exact same mechanism we saw in the Manus pre-close integration.
Right.
In both contexts, the power dynamics and technical directions shift long before the legal paperwork catches up. In partially realized deals, the architectural merging begins before they legally complete. In AI organizations, total infrastructural control shifts without an acquisition ever occurring.
So what does this all mean for you as you navigate the news in this rapidly changing tech landscape? We started this deep dive looking at a single transaction between Meta and Manus that supposedly didn't happen.
Right, suppose.
But what the EconWorks report has revealed is that the deal was not a failure. It was a partially realized alignment that exposes exactly how technological control is shifting right under our noses. So, the next time you are scrolling through tech news and you read an enthusiastic press release about a massive new AI strategic partnership, or you see headlines about regulators causing a mega merger to pause, don't just ask if the deal closed.
Look at the blueprints.
Exactly, look at the blueprints. You need to ask yourself if the technical control and engineering alignment have already quietly shifted. Traditional antitrust law looks at a proposed deal and asks, should this merger be allowed? But moving forward, equipped with this understanding, you should be asking the real question: when did the control actually begin?
And as we look ahead to the next evolution of this technology, I want to leave you with a final thought, drawn directly from the economic forecast at the very end of this report. We've spent our time today exploring how control emerges gradually, how it slips through the cracks of traditional acquisitions, partnerships, and due diligence.
Yeah.
But there is a much bigger storm on the horizon. What happens to our entire concept of a business transaction? What happens to the very idea of a competitive free market when the AI model itself stops being a product and becomes the market itself?
Man, that is a massive paradigm shift when the artificial intelligence model isn't just a tool being sold on a shelf, but the entire environment where all digital business actually happens. The rules don't just bend, they change completely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this shortcut has left you seeing the hidden architecture of the tech landscape a little more clearly and a lot more critically. Stay curious, keep questioning the blueprints, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of EconWorks. The goal of this series is to move beyond the surface-level descriptions of how markets work and start looking at the actual architecture of competition. We'll be back soon with another look at where the law and economics meet the market. For the full technical analysis and more from this series, visit us at econworks.com. If you found today's breakdown valuable, please subscribe and share the show. It helps us keep the analysis independent. From all of us here at EconWorks, thanks for listening.